When we are incorporating play into learning, there's not only increased retention and memory, but there's also increased social connections within our classroom and stress reduction, which really supports mental health of our young people.
If we want to engage our young people, let's look at tech campuses or big tech corporations where literally they hire young people, they do a bunch of research on young people so then they can result in the most productive workforce possible. And let's copy them. What do they have? They have break times, they have brain breaks, they have natural light everywhere.
Green space. You can't stand in front of a group of teenagers and be more engaging than their TikTok algorithm. But what we can do are these strategies like this, and play helps to promote that engagement on every level.
Podcast acknowledges the true and traditional custodians of the land we meet on here today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respect to elders past and present and are grateful to be on this country.
So no one told you teaching was gonna be this way. Your lesson plans are jokes, your patience broke, you're feeling in disarray. It's like you're always stuck in report writing, when it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your school year. But I'll be here for you
when the students start to riot.
I'll be here for you
even if your coffee has gone cold.
I'll be here for you, 'cause you're there for them too.
Hello team, and welcome back to Podclass. You are joined by your hosts. They are Will Massara, hello.
Hello.
The CEO and founder of Youth Leadership Academy Australia, and our token Gen Zer on the podcast. We love a bit of youth perspective.
Yes, just here to bring the tokenistic, point of view with a little bit of opinionated views.
He's good for something.
Yes,
yeah.
Plenty of things. And also by the founders of Youth Engagement Project, that is myself, Amanda, and Miss Sky.
Hello, hello, hello. Very excited to get stuck into today's topic, which is
the one about the importance of play. How fun.
How fun.
So fun.
I actually love talking about play because I think particularly as adults, we forget how important it is for us as well to really tap into play and to joy and to all those things that just help to kind of lighten the moments and make them so much more memorable for ourselves as well.
Before we dive in, I saw a quote the other day and it was something like, who mandated that everything had to be so serious?
Yes,
so seriously.
As adults and as, we are so quick to just go to, and of course we're wired, negativity bias and all of these things. And so we know why it happens sometimes, but we get so stuck in being serious when sometimes we just need to lighten the mood. And I think, with the state of the world and there's a lot of challenges occurring. And so I feel like the inclination to be quite serious about things is stronger more than ever. And that has a trickle-down effect. It has a flow-down effect into our young people. And so what we're going to be unpacking today is, first of all, why is play so important, not just for fun, but also developmentally, socially, and emotionally, and how can we incorporate it in our learning spaces? And along the way, let's just not take ourselves too seriously. Let's just not take life too seriously because, if there was a challenge or a problem in front of us, I bet whether we were entirely serious about it or completely playful about it, we're probably going to, maybe even being playful about it, if possible, is going to get us to a better outcome.
You know what I also love about the use of the word play instead of fun, because I think sometimes they can be kind of,
interchangeable.
Yeah. Is that idea of when I was a teacher, like a teaching student, learning how to be a teacher, I was on my teaching rounds. One of my first ever teaching mentors was one of the funniest people, like laugh out loud, funny teachers that I've ever been in. Like the students just loved being in his classroom because they never knew what was going to come out or what goofy thing was going to happen. And they were always in stitches. I don't know if they learned curriculum stuff, but they sure had a great time.
And they were engaged.
But they were so engaged. But I remember for me being really critical of myself when I started teaching because I thought that in order to be fun, you had to be funny. And I've realized they're two different things. Like being fun can be being playful and tapping into play and all those kind of things, which naturally I can do. Being funny is something that can sometimes have so much pressure in it as well. So I love that we're unpacking play because it's something that anyone can do. Anyone can tap into.
I love that reminder so much because for me, when I was starting out, I had this idea that to be considered a professional, you had to be quite serious a lot of the time. And you had to be quite, firm, and you had to know your things, and you couldn't make jokes, and you couldn't be too fun, and you couldn't be too funny, and you couldn't play too much, because if you played, because play is separate to hard work.
Yeah.
And to be considered professional, you've got to be a hard worker. But why is this?
Who mandated that? No one mandated serious.
Definitely don't fit into that category.
No.
Well, then you're in exactly the right place.
And if you don't think play is as important yet, well, let's talk about the stats of creativity, because I think play and creativity, they go very much into sync. And what we know is that as a young person, our creativity peaks at 5 years old. And then through all of the things like the world, we see a decline until we're as adults, we're like in the bottom 2 percentile of creative human beings. If you don't think creativity is important, look around you. Anything that you see that has been created required creativity, which required play.
Yeah.
So important.
And when we think about our young people, developmentally, it's, especially when we think about those early years, it's truly how young people start to understand themselves and the world around them is through play-based learning, is through, inserting themselves in scenarios and being creative and being imaginative. Like, that's how young people learn more about who they are and how the world works and how they want to show up and how different scenarios work. And so, I think there's been a lot of, it's been a really curious kind of journey lately in the education system. When I say lately, the last 10 years, and I'm sure all of our teachers would agree, like a real shift away from kind of self-led play-based learning, especially in those earlier years, to make space for, the compounding, I guess, pressure of teaching the entire curriculum and wanting children to be focused on the those core learnings, in numeracy and literacy.
Meeting their developmental standards, like all of these things.
Younger and younger and younger and younger. And so what that's doing is, it's like, okay, this is terrific, but also through listening to, leaders in this space, through years of educational experience and also through psychology, we know that those kind of open times to be able to play and explore are as important as the structured learning.
Totally.
And I also think play, I know from my experience, whenever there was an element of play involved in the classroom, our entire class would have increased memory of whatever we're learning. Like in year 3, I remember we were doing the times tables, and times tables was a song. So then our brain links that, and we get that extra layer of memory. Or there's even that, I know in America they have that state song. It's like Alabama, Alaska, blah, 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 blah. And the memory of all the states is just so much more because there's play in it.
Yeah, totally.
And I think we've chatted a little about, I guess, those earlier years in primary school, but the benefits are also huge for our teenagers as well. What we see in the data is that when we are incorporating play into learning, there's not only increased retention and memory, but there's also increased social connections within our classroom and stress reduction, which really supports mental health of our young people. So what we're going to do is we're going to unpack a number of strategies for the inclusion of more play in our spaces, whether you have an early childhood space or a primary school space or a secondary classroom. All of these things can be factored in at one time or another, and they absolutely enhance relationship, learning, memory, social skills, creativity, cognitive, I guess, processing of what we're learning. So we're going to go ahead and unpack these strategies.
We are. And I want to say too, I think it's important, I think particularly knowing with everything that we're competing with in terms of engagement in the classroom in this day and age, we've said it before, we'll say it again. We're not expected to, and you can't stand in front of a group of teenagers and be more engaging than their TikTok algorithm. But what we can do are these strategies like this, and play helps to promote that engagement on every level. We're biologically wired to switch off when we're bored, and play helps to counteract that. When we are interested, engaged, whatever it might be, we can promote that through play. We're not going to be bored. Of course, we're going to tap in, tune in, be invested in the lesson, and be more intrinsically motivated then to be invested in our learning.
And so how do we do that? How do we incorporate play? We're going to share a few strategies. So number one is to incorporate play-based learning activities where possible. And this is just strategies that, and you know, the incorporation of play within our lessons. And it could be, you know, this can happen in math, science. Like it could be just starting numeracy, for example, in a quick game, like last year I was teaching, and one of our we were doing entrepreneurship, and we were learning about money and how to use our money. And I started a maths class by just standing at the front of the space and saying, I have a sum of money in my pocket. You have 10 questions to ask, and I will give a yes or no answer. And your goal is to find out how much money is in my pocket right now by the end of those 10 questions. Boom.
Love that.
100%.
We are hooked. Like that is play, you know, and especially in numeracy, I know all of the games that exist for learning math and all of the games that exist around English. And if we can incorporate those play-based strategies into anything, even if it's that introduction, that hook, we've got them. Like that's an investment of 4 minutes to then hook them for the rest of the class.
And this isn't just for primary school. It's not even just for like lower secondary school. It's for like every single level. Universities should be incorporating play into it. But it's about how do you find the right balance of like what maturity level am I adding to this play? For example, you're not going to be singing the times tables with your year 12s. They may walk out of the classroom.
But you can do things like, as a VCE English teacher and teaching in that space, one of my favorite tools to have in the classroom with me was a dice. And we used to use that in so many ways. We'd be like, all right, so for this next writing activity, we'll roll the dice, and whatever number it lands on, that's how many like minutes we'll work on this. Or it might be whatever number it lands on, we have to try to
go back to school.
Or like, you know, whatever number it lands on, that's how many words we have to include in this sentence that, you know, say you roll on 5, they have to be 5-letter words. Or, you know, the amount of sentences we have to create, or whatever it is. But just that itself is like, that's creative, it's playful, it's bringing a sense of fun and taking away the seriousness of tasks, which makes learning so much more enjoyable.
Absolutely. So number one is to incorporate play-based learning activities wherever possible, even if it's just for that hook at the beginning of our lessons.
Yeah.
Number 2, allow for unstructured playtime. And I think this is so important because this is when we empower their capabilities of being able to make a decision within our young people. They start to learn the power of the decisions that they have, and they have that autonomy to be able to. And when I think it's harder now for young people to make decisions, statistically also, because we are told what to think so much. We are told what to do so much.
And then also there's so many more options now than there ever used to be. So it's like that choice paradigm as well, like paradox, like trying to figure out what's the best thing. Yeah.
And like I get decision fatigue on a good day. I'm sure that I'm not the only one. And
yes, you are not the only one.
But it's so important that our young people learn how to make a decision and accept the consequences of that decision too. If their game was boring, well, that's your consequence.
Yeah, and there's no expectation. If it is boring, that doesn't matter, which is also great because that's part of that unstructured piece. And I know it's really hard sometimes. I know even sometimes when I hang out with my nephew and he's like 2 and a bit, and he'll, you know, be instigating play, there's a tendency as an adult to try and want to jump in and like maybe give some structure to it. So, which character is this toy going to be or whatever, instead of just letting him guide whatever that looks like. So it doesn't matter what age it is, that unstructured piece is such an important part.
It's a chance to be curious as well and start to figure out what you do and don't like. Like play for everyone looks different. For example, I used to find it fun to read airport master plans in my spare time.
You and no one else.
Me and no one else. So just because you as an educator like something, you can't assume that your students also like it either.
And so I think strategically having periods of unstructured play or unstructured time in our learning can enhance learning. I know in Finland, they have a really interesting strategy all the way through high school where following, you know, a really structured 40 minutes or hour of learning, there will be 10 minutes of unstructured playtime.
Oh, shout out to Finland. Honestly,
regardless
would
of
love to
the
teach
age.
Next episode, recorded live from Finland.
Regardless of the age, and they are finding increased outcomes, increased, you know, memory, increase, not just socially, but academically as well.
Which makes sense. Like play, hello, dopamine hits like every time we're getting that
Every
response.
single
Like,
time.
of course, I'm going to be motivated to do that again and to tap into that again. My friend loves it.
And so it's like, is it 10 minutes lost or is it 10 minutes gained?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
yeah, that's a really powerful inclusion. Number 3.
Number 3.
Number 3 is all about using play to build social skills. So we know that when we play or we, might be setting up a team game or in team sports, anywhere where our students have to collaborate and work together. But when it's done in an environment where play is encouraged and fostered, and play doesn't mean competition. I just want to put that out there. Sometimes just but playing might be, problem solving or whatever it might be, working towards a common goal, and they're having to collaborate and connect. It can really promote increase social skills without the pressure of a particular outcome. So play is really healthy for that development.
And if you're looking for a tool or a resource to support that, building those social skills through play, Sky and I have developed with Youth Engagement Project a set of classroom culture cards.
I was like, oh, little plug. Where's this going?
No,
Shameless.
it's so valuable for supporting, that kind of building of social skills through play and connection. So these cards, we'll put them in the show notes. They are free. It's a free download and it's 72 cards. And they're also all tailored around self-determination theory and meeting psychological needs. But they're questions you can use in the classroom and students can use with each other to build that social cohesion, that social culture.
Love that.
Yes. Help yourself.
Number 4, Wilma Sarah.
Encourage outdoor play.
Yeah.
And we know that we know like natural light is so good for us. And it's a little side note. I know I love a side note. But I always say whenever we work into a school that has quite a bit of flexibility in the way that they do things, often independent schools or private schools, it's like, if we want to engage our young people, let's look at tech campuses or big tech corporations where literally they hire young people, they do a bunch of research on young people so then they can result in the most productive workforce possible. Yeah. And let's copy them. What do they have? They have break times, they have brain breaks, they have they have natural light everywhere.
Green spaces.
Why? Because
They
it
have
works.
meditation pods.
Yes.
Like all kinds
Exactly.
of stuff.
Why? Because it works to be able to engage their young people. They have playful spaces. I know Google has a bloody slide in there. Why? Because it works. That dopamine hit wants them to keep coming back. So how do we encourage our young people to go outside in our classroom as well? What lessons can we integrate their outdoors?
Yeah.
It's also a great way as well. It's like that counteracting boredom again as well. If we're just mixing it up, it might just be a standard English lesson.
Create some
Like,
uncertainty.
today, we're reading the novel, we're reading a couple of chapters. Let's head outside. It's a lovely day. We'll sit out on the lawn, whatever it might be. And it's not necessarily like playing, but just spending time in nature as well.
Yeah. And that, it promotes creativity, it promotes wonder, it promotes curiosity, which all leads back to play.
Yeah.
Number
Right.
5. We is all about promoting creative play. And it's really interesting. If I may, Sky, share a little story about you.
Oh,
Sure.
Is that
No idea
okay?
what this story is, but I'm ready for it.
Well, no, it's just kind of an anecdote about you. Something I have noticed about you and something you've shared with me over the years is that you have always had this idea or this kind of narrative about yourself that you're not a creative person because you didn't draw when you were growing up.
So true.
Right? No, but seriously. And so it's so when we think about creativity, so often it's pigeonholed as oh, you can draw really well or you can paint. You're creative. You're really creative, right? And it can happen so easily. And yet when we think about creativity, it is so much more than the arts.
I had an argument with Mum about this the other day because I got a D every single time in primary school in art. And I was like, it's art. It's subjective. Who's the
I'm
teacher?
creative in other ways. Hello,
Who's the
plain
teacher
boy.
to be able to make this call? But I also very much remember that one of the best lessons I ever had, well, I don't know why we were learning urban design in year 5, but we were learning something about cities. And the reason why it was so fun was because I got to design my own city.
Yeah.
And it's like that creative piece, right?
But then you got a D.
No, that was in art.
Oh,
Sorry.
Okay.
I was quite creative, I thought.
yeah.
But the teacher, I was like, it's art.
Yeah, but it's
Give
like
me a
that
D.
idea,
I'm 9 years old.
And creativity is across like so many areas, right? Like it's not, as you said, it's not just the arts, and we can put play. You might be like, oh, but I teach science. How do I put play in my classroom or whatever it might be? And it's like, no, there's opportunities for play and that expression and collaboration amongst people and that unstructured problem solving and things like that in any subject area.
So when we see thinking happening outside the box, and that is thinking creatively, let's feel free to name that, because that is creative thinking. Creative thinking it doesn't just mean being able to draw. Sky Hughes, you are very creative.
Thank you so much. I'll take it.
Yeah.
We up to number 6?
Number 6.
Number 6 is all about gamifying classroom tasks, things that we can gamify, bringing some gaming into them. And I know we're going to do a whole episode on gamification, so I don't want to delve into it too much, but the more that we can promote gamification and gamify things for students, they are 100% going to tap in and tune into that.
Mm-hmm. And also, I love what you said when we were talking about this episode before. You said you made the distinction that gamifying is not the same as competition.
Yes.
So when we gamify something, we are, I feel like it's so deeply connected to optimal challenge. We're having, experiencing optimal challenge. We want to know what comes next. What could this be? Where do I go? And it's not necessarily a competition and there's one winner. It's we're all experiencing that optimal challenge.
And again, side note, I'm taking a leaf out of Wilson's book here, but I'm a big board game player. Like board games is like it's a really big part of my life. But it genuinely is. Like my partner and I, we will opt often to play a game in the evenings rather than, put the TV on or whatever. And we love that. But some of the best games in the world, if you look at the top board games list, this is really getting niche, but bear with me, they are cooperative games. So they're games where it's not competition based of, player 1 versus player 2, but it's like we have a collective problem and we're working together to solve it. And they're the kind of game we love playing those kind of games. So gamifying something can look like a cooperative challenge. But anyway, I don't want to get too much into gamification because we'll come back to it.
You can literally do it in the smallest moments. For example, we love to use Chair Olympics. And all of a sudden, there's 100 young people just working together really quickly to clean the floor of chairs.
To beat the world record of who can stack chairs the fastest.
Versus everyone go ahead and we're going to safely pick up our chair and we're going... Number 7 is facilitate problem solving through play. I love this one because so often when we are looking at problems or challenges, it can feel heavy, it can feel challenging, it can feel serious. And so whether we're unpacking, as we were kind of mentioning at the start of the episode, a problem or a challenge in a very, very serious way, and let's not, we're not trying to make light of, real challenges in the world. It's, this isn't always appropriate, but it's about looking at problem solving and considering, well, how could we do this in a playful way? How can we think about, how can we wonder about it? How can we get really curious about it? How can we, enhance a willingness to take a risk? Because when we're solving a problem, there can be a tendency for young people to lean out because they don't want to get it wrong, versus if we can kind of bring a playful edge to it, there's less fear of making mistakes and there's more willingness to take risks.
Yeah, because it lowers the stakes, right? 100%. So there's a lower gradient in that approach.
And I think I shared a few episodes ago about the story of when we were writing persuasive text, and the problem was they're going to build an abattoir next to the school. And that was a real life problem that all we needed to do was think about it creatively on how we're going to solve it. And every single young person in the classroom was bought into it.
Yeah. And the last one is modeling playful behavior, which we know this is tapping into what Amanda spoke about at the very start. You spoke about at the very beginning that often play is seen as you're not serious, or you're not great at your job, or it's not how teaching should be done. And we know the opposite to be true, and that modeling playfulness is incredibly important, not only for yourself as an educator, because we're modeling play and we know how important that is, but because of the culture that helps to foster and create in your classroom and the relationships and trust that we form with our students. It makes us so much more approachable. Young people want to be around us when we tap into that playfulness too.
Yeah.
And we're not asking you to get a pair of clown shoes and start wearing them to school each day. That's not what this is. It's like, how
I mean, if
can
you
we-
want to, go ahead.
I mean,
Like,
sure, you know, and it's also, that's also disruptive, but like, which is supportive of learning. But how can you, you know, bring a smile, bring a lightness, bring a, oh, how was the weekend? Or, oh my gosh, you would not believe this happened. Or, you know,
It
that's
brings you to their the same level.
Totally.
Like we know this is probably the thing we have most experience in at Weiler is like, how do we create an environment where young people feel so connected to the facilitators and the speakers on stage? And it's through bringing that playful piece. It's the reason why we don't have uniforms. It's the reason why we don't call, if a young person's called me sir, I'm like, but it's them little pieces of relatability that playful brings to them, and it gives them permission to do the same.
Yeah, I love that. So this has been we've talked all about play, a bunch of strategies to implement or to increase in your classroom. We know that play helps to motivate our students through tapping into their intrinsic motivation, all those good dopamine releases. And we would love to continue to support a generation of young people that are playful. They're leaving school being playful adults and continuing to be motivated through that in their lives.
and continuing to, that nurtures their development along the way as well.
Love it.
See you very soon.
We're Podclass. Bye.
Bye.
I'll be here for you, 'cause you're there for them too.
Thanks so much for tuning into Podclass. If you've enjoyed this episode, we would adore it if you could go on to Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to your podcasts, and leave us a review. 5 stars would be lovely. We would love to get this podcast into as many ears as possible so we can help and support as many people as possible who help young people. And if you're not already doing so, please go along to Instagram and follow us at podclass.aus.